Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay and the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack-It Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
Welcome to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon, Eric Lopez, and Brian Murphy with you. We're recording this on Thursday morning because, late baseball last night. Lots to talk about this morning. And how's it feeling, gentlemen? Is the coffee flowing this Thursday morning or what?
What are you doing, Jeffrey? It's so early.
Why am I here? Why am I awake?
I'm like a newborn puppy. I haven't even opened my eyes yet.
Well, let me tell you something. When you have kids, you become a morning person, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
You know, there's a previous life of mine where I used to have to get up around 4 a.m, but of course the difference was I got paid to do that. I don't anymore.
What? Man, holy smokes.
Back when I was a radio producer. That's my policy as far as I only get up early when I have to if I have to get paid for it.
I'm paying you to do this. What are you talking about?
Well, that's why I'm up.
All right. This is blackandgoldbanneret.com. We are UCF's home on SB Nation Sports Network. You can follow us at blackandgoldbanneret.com, facebook.com/blackandgoldbanneret, UCF_banneret. Like we said, we have lots to talk about. We're going to talk about softball in the tournament, which starts today, the A-Sun tournament. Oh my God, American Athletic Conference tournament.
What decade are you in?
Yeah,
you up? What's that coffee?
Coffee hasn't quite hit me yet. We're also going to talk women's tennis in the Sweet 16. They're out in beautiful Malibu, California this weekend to play number 6 Pepperdine, with a chance to come back to the USTA tennis complex if they knock off Pepperdine. And also women's golf is going to NCAA Nationals, which is huge. Congrats to Emily Marin on it. First time in 23 years that they're doing that, which is fantastic. But we begin with the latest from baseball, which was last night. UCF desperately needing a win over a quality opponent, and they do so against number 18 Miami last night. It was not easy. UCF jumped out early. They were up 8-1. Miami came charging back in the 7th and 8th. Got within one run at 8-7. With one and they had the winning run on, I think, with one out. Is that right, Murph? And then interesting move by Coach Greg Lovelady. He brings out Jackson Clare to get the final 2 outs, and he does do that. So the final 8-7 last night, UCF defeats Miami. We have the latest RPI. This is as of this morning. UCF jumps 5 spots. They jump from 57 to 52 by virtue of that win over Miami. They're 31-19 overall. Not as great a jump as we were hoping for, but it's a jump nonetheless. Remember, coming into this weekend, they were in that D1Baseball.com had them in that last, the first 5 out.
Yes.
Yep. So this was what are we thinking from this win? Did this get them into the tournament, or to what extent did it improve their chances?
No, it didn't get them in the tournament. It wouldn't have gotten them. I mean, I never thought about that. I thought that this was a win they needed just for their resume, but it wasn't like this is a win that, like, all right, that's it. We're done here.
It wasn't like they just didn't win for basketball, basically.
Yeah, right. It was just a win that they really needed, but it doesn't really change the fact that they really still need. They have work to do. They probably still need to win, I would say, 4 of their last 5 games in the regular season, which is at FAU next week, which is a top 40 RPI team, and then you have 3 games throughout the regular season against Houston, which is another top 40 RPI team. But this is a very important win because and it's kind of amazing, Jeffrey. Again, I remember being on this podcast a few weeks ago talking about how mediocre this team was, and you just didn't know if this team was any good because they were just floundering. Their offense was basically 5 people that you could depend on, and the rest you didn't know what you're going to get. Their pitching was just racked with injuries and inconsistency, and so now they've won 8 of 10, and 5 of those 8 wins were come by 1 run. So it's very it's not comfortable, but they are finding ways to win, and now they get a weekend off. There's this weekend they were scheduled to face Dayton back in the preseason, and then Dayton pulled out of that matchup due to reasons, and so now UCF yeah, right, it is. So now UCF waits till Tuesday, but it's still a very important win, and they do still have work to do.
Now, here's where this got interesting, was because this was beautifully played by Greg Lovelady, because knowing that he doesn't have a weekend series coming up, he threw Grant Sherman out there to start against Miami. He got 3 innings. He gave up 1 run, 2 hits. Solid job. Next 3 innings, he threw Chris Williams out there. Gave up 2 hits, no runs. Struck out 1. Walked 1. So those 2 guys who are usually, weekend guys, they were able to hold off Miami for those first 6 innings and get to the bullpen. Now, things got a little squirrely out there with Litchfield, Westberg, and Kyle Kemp. But let's give Jackson Clare some credit for getting that 1 out that he needed to do on a strikeout that may or may not, depending on how these last 4 games go, save the season. So now you have the weekend off basically to rest up, and then they, like you said, they have FAU in Boca on Tuesday before a 3-game set against Houston to finish out. So as we look forward to this FAU game, I thought that they would have jumped a little bit more than 5 spots with a win over Miami, but I get it. But if they can, get the W over FAU, is how much is that going to help? Go ahead, Eric.
Well, part of the thing is the Bethune-Cookman game, they dropped about 4 or 5 spots because they were coming in at 54, and I think they dropped to 57, 58, Brian?
50
after the
57.
Yeah.
By the way, a game that they won. So
yeah, but unfortunately, this is the flaw with the RPI. This is why this is why college basketball got rid. Some of the reasons why college basketball got rid of the RPI. The flaw with the RPI is UCF, who scheduled Bethune-Cookman. In fact, I think they scheduled this makeup game. Right before the start of the year, Murph, or early in the season? It was definitely early.
Right. They were trying to fill spots after Dayton bailed.
Right. And what happened, Bethune is traditionally pretty good. They've had, especially recently. Well, this year they've had their worst year that they've had arguably in 2 decades. I was talking to the Bethune-Cookman people prior to the game on Tuesday because I was calling the game, and they're talking about how they're in danger of missing the MEAC tournament for the first time in 2 decades.
Yeah, their RPI is 270, by the way.
Well, that's terrible. And you mentioned about Miami save. I would argue that the win against Bethune, the base hit by the freshman Ben McCabe, who hit a bases-loaded clearing double in the bottom of the 8th. UCF fell behind 5-0 early against Bethune-Cookman and looked lifeless. I mean, to Greg Lovelady's quote, was flat. They felt they were flat. If they lose that Bethune game, their at-large bid is done. It's finito.
Yeah.
And so they won the game there. And I think these 2 games back-to-back, in a lot of ways, don't you think, Murph, describes the UCF season? That there was not pretty. You saw flaws. Then you would see flashes of this team's got a chance to be pretty good. Then you see the negative flaws. And you're like, oh, this team's not that great. Oh, maybe they're done. And they still find ways to win 2 games and have, life here down the stretch.
Yeah, and what's funny about Bethune, so you say the 270 RPI, that's out of 299 teams. So again, they're near the bottom here. Once they had to go to extra innings and get a walk-off hit from Matthew Micah, And then you had they were down 5-0 on Tuesday night, and then they had to score 5 runs in the 8th to come back and win that game 6-5. So even against the worst competition, they don't make it easy. And then you have a top 15 team like Miami on the road, and they almost squander an 8-1 lead with 6 outs to go. It's amazing, but again, they find a way to win. And we should also mention too that even if they do win 4 or 5, they probably still have to win a couple of games in the AAC tournament in Clearwater in a couple of weeks as well.
Well, here's the thing. A couple things about that, to Murph's point, to back him up. The committee in baseball, especially last year, made an emphasis of saying you have to be at least 500 or better in your conference, which I applaud. I think other sports should take note. So that's an issue for UCF because they're 9-12. Their marquee wins are all midweek. In fact, they swept the Sunshine State.
Yeah.
Miami and
13-1 midweek this year. Is that right?
Yeah.
13-1.
Yeah, that sounds right. But sweeping they swept the Sunshine State. They beat Miami, Florida, and Florida State all in the same year for the first time since 1985. If this was any other year, that would pretty much put you in the tournament. The problem is Florida's on the bubble themselves, which is crazy to say. FSU has turned the season around to some extent, although they got no hit at Stetson on Wednesday night. So their RPI dropped to the 60s, although a lot of the projections have Florida State back in there. And I think with Mike Martin and being his last year, I don't see them keeping them out unless they just collapse down the stretch. But the thing is, they don't have a weekend series win that's marquee. Their best wins on the weekend was a game against Auburn and a game against UConn. Well, they lost both of those series. They have to win the Houston series. That's their last chance to win the series. If they can sweep and get to 12-12, I like their chances better. Otherwise, if they win 2 out of 3 and they're 11-13, Murph's right. They're going to have to win 2 to 3 games in the conference tournament. Because remember, guys, we were having the same conversation a year ago. And we're like, well, I think we can get in. They can get in. And UCF finished, I think, 11-13 in conference last year, and then got knocked out early in the conference tournament and didn't make the tournament. So,
right.
I do think the FAU game's big, but I think the Houston series is even bigger because they need some Houston's an NCAA tournament team / bubble team as well. So they need a signature win in the weekend series that the committee can kind of sink their teeth in and then carry that momentum to Clearwater to sneak in through the back door.
Well, when we talk about Clearwater, here's the situation. Obviously, the last place team doesn't get to go. Right now, that's South Florida at 5-13. UCF is in that 7th playoff spot, if you will, at 9-12. The 3 teams ahead of them are Houston, UConn, and Memphis. Houston is 9-9, and the Cougars. I'm actually pulling up I've actually got their schedule pulled up.
Houston's 9-9. Houston's 9-9 in the league, as well as UConn, which. Murph, UConn's kind of been disappointing in the league because we all feel they're the second best team. They arguably maybe have the best pitcher in the league, and Frioli, but yet they've been at 9-9. It's been a weird year in the American in baseball.
This year's not been as strong as last year, where we were talking about how this is one of the best. This is still a good league with ECU. Tulane's offense is very, very fierce, but it's not as strong as last year.
No,
definitely.
No, and I would say this, East Carolina's the clear superior team. In fact, I mean, depending on what you look at projections, ECU might be is definitely going to be a national seed. Yeah. And maybe even be able to be a top 8 national seed, which means they could host a regional and the super regional. But I think from a Clearwater standpoint, and this is why the Houston series is also important. If you're UCF, if you can avoid playing East Carolina in the 1-8 early, maybe get the 7 seed, 6 seed, whatever. I think you can do damage because I think, as we saw with the Tulane series, Tulane's like one of the top teams conference record-wise. UCF won 2 out of 3 and shut down Tulane's offense.
Yeah.
So to me, there's not a big difference this year between 2 and 7. And while Connecticut obviously is probably the second best team, I still think, with Frioli, but Frioli's only going to pitch once in Clearwater. It is probably going to be early in the tournament. So to me, you can make a noise and make a run at the conference tournament. Yeah. Probably your best advice to do that is to avoid ECU. So I do think it's not only important to get in, but to try to move up past the 8th spot and avoid ECU The perfect world would be a 6 or a 7, and you're on the opposite bracket of East Carolina, because then who knows? You can make a run all the way to the final.
Yeah. Well, here's the deal with Houston. They've got Tulane at home this weekend. Tulane is second place. They're 10-7. Houston is 9-9. But could you imagine if Houston sweeps that series, all of a sudden they leapfrog Tulane by a significant margin? UConn this weekend is at home for South Florida. South Florida is just playing bad. So yeah, you're pulling for UConn on that one. Memphis, by the way, who's 8-9, they play Cincinnati at home this weekend as well. Cincinnati's 11-10.
One of the three of us is definitely rooting for Memphis, and it ain't me. It's not me or Murph involved in that.
It's me, because if Memphis can seal up one of those conference spots, it means I get to go to Clearwater. So that's the situation right now for UCF. If you're scoreboard watching, this is going to be the weekend where everything kind of evens out with the schedule for the most part. So we'll be keeping an eye on that as UCF goes. Real quick, Murph, best case scenario, just give me your quick take. Let's say UCF does the unthinkable here and wins out, beats FAU, beats Houston 3 straight. What would you put their percentage odds at that point?
They probably still need to win a game in the conference tournament to at least assure themselves a 500 season in conference, as Eric said. But at least one at that point. But maybe one will do with it. If you go 2 or 3, you might need 2 wins. But if you win 4 straight, if you win 5 straight here, you may only need 1 win down in Clearwater to get it.
And
don't
right
go
now,
0-2. Don't go 0-2. That would be the biggest thing. Do not go 0-2 like last year, because I think we found out that hurt them big time.
Yep.
Well, interestingly enough, if the tournament started today, UCF would be in a bracket with Memphis, Cincinnati, and Tulane. We're on the other side.
Sign me up.
Yeah,
sign me up.
Exactly, because the other side would have ECU, Houston, UConn, and Wichita State. That's a murderer's row, if you ask me.
Yeah, that's a worse. That's definitely a harder bracket. We should, and just mention that UCF did take 2 of 3. Their best series win is at Tulane, winning 2 of 3 last weekend against a top 5 offense in America, with a first rounder in Cody Hosey in Tulane, leading the nation in home runs, and they shut down Tulane's offense to the tune of 10 runs over 3 games. It was pretty amazing for a pitching staff that you just kind of to have not known what you're going to get from that pitching staff for most of the season, and then they really kind of mute one of the best offenses in college baseball.
Right. So we'll be keeping an eye on the scoreboard this weekend, and of course the FAU game on Tuesday night down in Boca. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk a little golf and tennis. Women's golf advancing to the NCAAs. Women's tennis advancing to the Sweet 16. Can they get back to Orlando? We'll talk about that and more when we return. This is the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.
Welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon, Brian Murphy, Eric Lopez with you, recording this on a Thursday morning as you get ready for, well, what's going to turn out to be a pretty busy weekend of UCF sports here coming up, even without baseball playing. It's postseason time for the spring sports, and what a weekend it was last weekend for UCF women's tennis. We're going to talk about them in women's golf, but we lead off with tennis as the Knights went up to Tallahassee for that regional, and lo and behold, look what happened. They sweep Alabama 4-0. Then they play the host and 11 seeded in the tournament, Florida State Seminoles, and knock them off 4-1. So UCF is in the Sweet 16. This is a huge development. They're in the Sweet 16. They're traveling out to Malibu, California.
They're already there. Yeah, they're already there.
Yeah, they're already there. Actually, yesterday, they were there. They play Friday, tomorrow, from when we're recording this, 4 p.m. Eastern time at Pepperdine. By the way, and Murph, you know this. You're a California kid.
Yeah.
The most beautiful college campus in the country. if you ask me.
It is. I almost went to grad school there. It's a fantastic campus.
I've driven past it a couple years ago. My wife and I we drove the Pacific Coast Highway, and when you drive the PCH and you go north, you drive basically right past Pepperdine, and it's buried on a cliff to your right. To the left is the ocean.
Yep.
And let's give them credit. We know how good they are in college baseball. In tennis, they are just outstanding, and they have been for years and years. And this is a huge opportunity for UCF to be there. Pepperdine is the number 6 seed in the tournament. They knocked off Fairfield in the first round and Cal in the second round to get to this point. This is a big ask for UCF, traveling all the way out there to play a very tough opponent in a picturesque setting, but they have a chance to get to the round of 8. If they get to the round of 8, they're coming back home. They get to play here in Orlando at the USTA Tennis Center, because that's where the round of 8, 4, and the championship will be held for the women's and men's team tournament. But how about this moment, Brian and Eric, for Brian Kaneko, because we've seen this kind of brewing for a while now, and look at how, and it's amazing. It's just like we thought with football a couple years ago. It's amazing how quickly things can turn around. And here they are in the Sweet 16. And Brian, you've got a piece coming up on Black and Gold Banneret about how this team deserves your attention. What is it about this team that has just worked for them?
Well, I think it's just like, these are the sports that we need to pay more attention to, especially when they make the Sweet 16. And this kind of goes to the larger vein of how successful UCF Athletics has been this year. But beating Alabama and then beating FSU, I don't care what sport you're in. For UCF fans, that should mean something. Both of those, when you beat both of those teams, that's important, and that should be recognized and lauded. So I feel like this team might be playing with some house money right now, but just the success they've had, people need to realize what this team is doing as they move forward through this tournament. It's amazing what they've achieved so far and how they've worked it up from years past to now, where it was just sort of floundering, and now it is what it is. It's an amazing turnaround by Brian Kaneko.
Eric, this is such a huge opportunity for them. Pepperdine is 23-3. What are UCF's chances at this point, considering that UCF themselves is 24-3 coming in, but the competition? I mean, when you got to go all the way across the country to play a team that you're not overly familiar with, this is a tough task, isn't it?
Well, it is, and I think we talk. I mean, in fairness, I will say, if you've been a frequent listener of the Black and Gold Banneret, you have known about the tennis success. So I like to think that we are we've done our part as best as we can.
I'm writing the article for those who don't listen to this podcast.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
For all those slackers who aren't listening, guess what? You get to hear from Murph anyways. Go ahead.
There you go. No, look, this is tough. I mean, you got to go out west. We talked about a few weeks ago that because UCF was the host for the national championship in women's tennis, that the road was going to be tough. And they started off in Tallahassee, pulled off a great win. Now you got to go to Pepperdine. It's been very good. In fact, Pepperdine, ready for this? Ranked, right? Not only are they the 6th seed, what's funny about that, some would argue, according to you would argue that they might be even lower ranked than that they were underseeded. Some people, I mean, they were at number 6 in the country. Recently in the ITA rankings.
Most recent, they were number 6. They were just ahead of Texas and Vandy. A few points behind South Carolina, but still.
Correct. So, it's a tall task. They're the underdog for sure. I don't think they are a team that's like satisfied to just be there. As Brian mentioned, they got to play loose. And it's a historic match, because if they can somehow pull the upset, which would be an upset, and beat Pepperdine, they would come home for the quarterfinals and have a legit shot to make it a run here for the national championship, which is wild. But
it's nuts.
It's really to Murph's point. People could talk about, well, we want our teams to be winning and they play for the national title. They can in tennis. As much as football is so popular, as I've said this many a times, football will never play for the national championship with the way the system is. And I think that's been proven over the last couple of years. So, but that's not the case in tennis here. So, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. It was a great win to beat Florida State. That was a tight match. They dominated Alabama. To me, and I know we'll get into this probably in a few weeks when we do the end of the year bannies, but you can make the case that women's tennis right now is the team of the year on campus.
Yeah. Not to get too ahead of ourselves here, but let's say UCF does get past Pepperdine.
Not to get too ahead of ourselves, but let's get way ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, let's get ahead of ourselves. Why not? Hey, it's our podcast. We can get as far ahead as we want. They would play the winner of Stanford and Kansas. Kansas knocked off Florida this past weekend.
Wow.
So that gives you an idea of where they are. And Stanford knocked off.
Choke job by Florida.
Round.
What a choke job.
Well, Kansas is the ranked team, or they're the seeded team. Florida was not seeded. So Kansas actually hosted that. So nice try, Lopez. You're throwing stuff at Florida.
Yeah, Eric wanted to say that.
Yeah, because the Colorado thing, is that what it is?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. Maybe Florida tennis should follow the football model then and just not play anybody outside the conference. That's what happens. You run the risk of losing games. I'm sorry.
Don't take it out on the Florida women's tennis team. It's not their fault they get clobbered by Kansas. Anyway,
of all sports.
So that's what UCF is looking at. I mean, but I think that the good thing is they have this amount of time to prepare for Pepperdine, to get used to their surroundings. They went out there a couple days early, and they should be ready to play. So again, tough, a tall hill to climb on the cliffs of the Pacific Coast. But if anyone can do it, they can. So we'll be watching that. No television coverage from what I can tell, but there will be live stats on NCAA.
Now make a quick note. If UCF were to get to Lake Nona, first of all, we would encourage you to go out there. Like me and Jeff would go out there. Murph might even join us.
Brian Ormiston, you hear that? We are totally coming out there.
And we mean it. I know we've said this in the past episode. It's part of our gimmick. I understand, but no, we really do. We would go. I don't know weird stuff has always come up, like, the Orlando Magic making the playoffs and things like, and, bad weather and things like that.
Kids,
Yeah. Work. But if they do, they go. But more importantly now, for those that can't go, it would be televised, I believe, on the tennis channel. The tennis channel and the USTA have reached a deal where they will carry the NCAA championships for tennis. They reached a deal earlier this week where the tennis channel will be the home for the NCAA championships in tennis, which would make sense, especially at Lake Nona, because the tennis channel has a set there. They do a lot of live programming from Lake Nona. They reached that deal in December with the USTA Center. So I believe that starts this year, the coverage there, the tennis channel. But hopefully we'll need to look that up after Friday.
Right. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. And, again, first things first, got to get through Pepperdine, but if they can.
Yeah, which is a big, great. Pepperdine's really good. So let's not act like that. Like I said, they are the underdog. Let's make no mistake about that.
All right. Over to women's golf. Real quick. Oh,
tennis, lost a tight match to Florida State in Gainesville, 4-3. And Jeff, you could look up the press release here to back me up on this. And
there was a 3-hour rain delay, wasn't there?
There was a 3-hour rain delay, and then men's tennis arguably got as screwed as any UCF team has ever had in the history of UCF athletics. Unbelievable injustice. It came down to the final match. There was a serve that was called an ace that UCF served and I think got in. I mean, it's all in there in the recap. And then after they went to their seats, Florida State challenged the call. It got overturned to a double fault. Instead, by the way, there's it's not like there's technology here as far as replay like in the ATP tour.
Yeah, they don't have the Cyclops machine, right?
Correct. FSU then got awarded the game. And they would go on to win that set and win the match. And it's against the rules. That was prior to the rain delay. Then they had the rain delay, but it changed the match. I think it was 3-2 at the time. And actually, UCF did a good job of breaking down the rule about that. That should not have happened, because if you want to challenge a call, you have to do it right away. You can't just, the coach can't come out and ask for a challenging the call like 3-4 minutes later, and that's what happened. So it's very unfortunate, because the men's tennis deserved a better fate than that. But they had a great year themselves. I just wanted to point that out, because that was ridiculous and unfortunate.
Yeah, I'm going to read right from the release here from UCF, and I don't know who wrote this for UCF, but credit to them. Do we know if it was Ken or if it was somebody else?
I don't know.
All right, so with Pavel and now that's UCF's players. Pavel and Jalef's match tied at 3-3, and in the third set, the two were locked in a deuce point. Jalef was serving and double faulted. Pavel celebrated, and Jalef was frustrated, as both should be in that circumstance. However, as both players made their way back to the bench, Florida State's coach went to the official to appeal the call. The official then overruled the double fault, said the serve was good, awarding Jalef the 4-3 edge, Jalef being the Florida State player. This is straight from the UCF release. This next chunk of information comes straight from Part 1, Section J, Number 1 of the ITA rulebook. J, appeal to official of a player's call. Number 1, appeal must be immediate. When a match has an official in direct observation of the court, a player may make an immediate verbal appeal of an opponent's call. Coaches may instruct their player to appeal as long as it is done immediately. The official shall not prompt the request for the appeal. As previously stated, both players were already on their way back to the benches. There was no call ever from Jalef to appeal for an overrule. The rule also says the coach can advise their player to appeal it, but instead the coach went straight for the appeal himself, which is not allowed. After that occurred, Jalef went on to win the next game, take a 5-3 third set lead, with Pavel holding a 30-15 lead. The skies opened up and rain began to pelt the courts. The rain did not let up until much later in the day, as Pavel and Jalef sat for over 3 hours to wait for the weather to pass. When play resumed, Jalef took the game, and ultimately the match edging Pavel 4-6, 6-4, 6-3. UCF season comes to a close with a record of 15-11. 15-11, the Knights' young stars showed off their stuff all season long and proved that there's a promising future ahead for the Black and Gold. That is some, I'm not going to lie here, that is some crap.
I told you, it's one of the biggest screw jobs that any UCF team has ever gotten in any sport.
Remarkable. I would love to get a hold of John Roddick and ask him about that.
Well, I guarantee you that, right. I mean, he must have been livid. And you don't just put that on a press release out of nowhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, that was definitely, I have to believe people were red hot about that, and rightfully so.
John must have been absolutely beside himself at that, because nobody knows the game of college tennis better than he does. And for that, boy, I'll tell you, that is unbelievable. So it's such a bad break for UCF men's tennis, because they were right there. I mean, who knows how it would have gone? I mean, a 3-hour rain delay. It's just right. It is what it is, but man, oh man, that was tough. All right, I want to talk about women's golf, because they are moving on to the NCAA Championship. So they win the regional, the Cle-Elum, or they didn't win the regional, the Cle-Elum regional, but they finished sixth, one stroke ahead of Ohio State, and the top 6 advanced. So from that regional, it was this was out in Seattle, Washington, mind you. This is USC, Washington, Northwestern, Arkansas, San Jose State, and UCF. All move on. Now, Arkansas is hosting the NCAA championships in Fayetteville, but UCF moves on. The women's golf team, I believe that's the first time. Is that right, Eric, that they move on to the NCAA championships? And the first time under Emily Merritt, I know that for sure.
Yeah.
But held May 17th through the 22nd. Congrats to UCF women's golf, man. They just continue to make things happen. And as you look at the player leaderboard, Ana Laura Collado finished in second in the regional individually, one stroke behind the winner, Jennifer Chang of Southern Cal. But let's give some credit to UCF women's golf here, because they took care. It's remarkable to see how well that they did, in this point leading up to this, and they're moving on to the NCAAs. They get to play they will play for a national championship.
By the way, it's the first time for the program since 95-96 season that they're playing for the national championship, which is a long time. So I guess what I said a few minutes ago about women's tennis team being the team of the year. Well, women's golf says, wait, excuse me. Yeah. what a job Emily Marin has done this year. You know Emily pretty well, Jeffrey, having covered the program. This is unbelievable. They're playing for the national championship. Collado, actually, I followed her because, Tuesday I was calling the UCF Bethune game and I was giving updates, and she was in the lead. And she led there for a while. So she had a great, week herself. She had 16 birdies during the event there, which is pretty remarkable. It had 6 bogeys, shot 10 under, as you mentioned there, and really finished strong. I mean, it was a fantastic showing for her. That's fantastic. And in fact, she posted the second best 54-hole score over all 4 regions and the second best in program history.
Right.
So
it's pretty amazing.
It really is, considering the success women's golf has had. So huge for Emily Marin and the company to play for the national championship in Arkansas. That's going to be big time. It's going to be May 17th through the 22nd. So, I mean, my goodness. I mean, you look at next week, and normally this time of year things slow down a little bit. But you got baseball going with Houston at Critical Series. Who knows? You got the USTA Center hosting the tennis championships. UCF may or may not be involved. And now we know that's also the same weekend. Rowing, the Dynasty program, by the way, is going for another American Conference championship to try to in advance of the NCAAs again, which they're the overwhelming favorites. And now you got women's golf trying to play for the national championship May 17th through the 22nd at Blessings Golf Club in Fayetteville, Arkansas.
Interesting how they do this tournament, by the way. It says here 4 rounds of stroke play for individuals and then 2 days of match play for the team entry. So this is going to be a grueling tournament, but like I said, they're in the field. So we'll see how that shakes out.
I wonder if there's. I'm curious if like the Golf Channel or somebody will carry it.
I imagine that they would, but I haven't seen anything. We'll keep you updated on blackandgoldbanneret.com and our Twitter account, UCF_Banneret. On that. All right, stick around. When we get back, softball, Eric Lopez. They're in the conference tournament. Single elimination. It starts today, in a couple hours, in fact, from when we're talking right now.
It might have already happened, depending on when you're listening.
You're right. Stick around. We'll be right back. This is the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon, Eric Lopez, and Brian Murphy with one foot firmly asleep currently with you on this Thursday morning. We talked about how busy this postseason was. Baseball is coming up on it. Women's golf, women's tennis, men's tennis was eliminated in ridiculous fashion. And the postseason continues with UCF softball. They are starting the American Athletic Conference tournament today. Today being Thursday. UCF is the 5 seed. They are playing the 4-seeded Wichita State Shockers in the first round. It is a single elimination tournament. For the American, the 1 seed, by the way, is South Florida. They play Memphis. Actually, they should be underway right about now.
I'm watching it right now. Yeah, yep. I'm watching it as we're recording.
Wichita State and UCF, 37 minutes. That's an odd number. 37 minutes following the conclusion of game 1.
Thank you. I'm the one. I said the same thing. Yes.
Tulsa is the 2 seed against ECU, and then Houston's the 3 seed against 6-seeded UConn. Again, single elimination in softball, which you and I, Eric, have talked about many times. I don't like it, but I get it. But it may be a necessary thing because the weather is going to be very squirrely in Houston this weekend. They're hoping for the best, but preparing for the worst, I would imagine. You can watch the games on American Digital Network. ESPN2 will carry the final on Saturday, scheduled for noon. Assuming it happens, obviously, with the weather situation as is.
No, seriously, let's address that real quickly here, because you and Murph are the weather gurus. You love weather.
Yeah.
I've been told from friends of mine in Houston that are not associated with UCF, or UCF that live there for a living. They said that the weather forecast is really bad. Really bad, really bad. Like they don't believe, they think Sunday's literally going to be washed out all day and night. They're worried about flooding in the city.
There is a flash flood watch for Houston and Galveston in effect right now. So
correct.
That gives you an idea of how bad they're thinking it might be.
Yeah, so this is going to be an interesting week to see if they're able to get the games in. Sources of mine in the conference have told me There were discussions of moving this up to Wednesday, like they did 2 years ago when I was in East Carolina, and they had concerns about the weather. However, some of the coaches rebuffed on that, particular South Florida and Connecticut, who were literally not in town yet. So that's kind of a problem. I'm surprised they didn't try to get 2 quarterfinal games in Wednesday, and try to get 2 done today, because the weather Thursday morning, as we record, it looks pretty decent that they might be able to get this in. The forecast says that the rain probably doesn't arrive until about 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock afternoon, perhaps. Who knows? You guys who are listening might know the answer by the time this airs, or later on, depending when you're listening. But Friday is really bad, and then Saturday is not supposed to be great. It's supposed to be clear Sunday. So the schedule is going to be kind of wonky here, and we'll see what happens if they're in. This would be the 3rd time. Houston's hosting a conference tournament for the 4th time. This would be the 3rd time it's been altered by weather. 5 years ago, in the inaugural American Conference Championship, they lost a day, ironically enough, on a Friday. They got washed out. So the championship game didn't get played until Sunday morning. I would know, I was there. UCF played Louisville, lost that game, and then we flew out Sunday night and literally had to watch the selection show while we were in the air.
On the plane. Oh, my gosh. Well, this is according to Rachel Bryers of ABC 13 in Houston. Flash flood watch has been issued for all of Southeast Texas from right now, 1 p.m. today, so that's Thursday, through 7 p.m. on Saturday.
Yeah.
From Galveston all the way up to College Station and points in between. So that's not good. That's really not good. Flood watch, 90% chance of rain on Thursday, 90% chance on Friday, 100% chance of rain on Saturday.
Yeah.
And windy. Now it should be dry on Sunday for Mother's Day, but God knows if they're going to get how they're going to.
The problem is the question's going to be how many games do they get in? They have to somehow, if they could at least get the quarterfinals done, preferably by Thursday, but if not, at worst by Friday. Something, because here's the problem: if you're on Saturday and you still haven't finished the quarterfinals, there's no way they're going to finish the tournament. Right. They can't play this. It has to be done by Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon at the latest. So you've got to at least get through, at least have a chance to get maybe the semifinals and a final done on a Sunday. That's a big if. Yeah. So we'll see what happens. Weather people tend to be wrong a lot, so maybe they'll be wrong here once in a while. But having been up there many times, they actually do a pretty decent job over there in the weather in Houston, unlike other places.
You hear him throwing shade at us, Murphs, telling us weather people are wrong a lot. So
I look, it is part of the gig. But when you've got percentages like 100%. Usually
it's hard to be wrong, right?
That's all
it's hard to be wrong.
Yeah. So, well, here's the deal. They're going to try and play these games.
I will say this: if they don't finish the tournament, the rule. By the way, if they don't finish the tournament, it depends on how many games they get in. Usually, they just go to the regular season champion to get the automatic bid, or if they've gone deep enough in the tournament, they might go with the highest seed in the tournament. Every conference is different.
The highest surviving seed, is that how it would?
Correct. But
that's interesting. That's interesting.
We don't know that what the American does yet, because they're probably trying to figure it out as we speak.
Right. Well, South Florida plays Memphis first, right? And Memphis is the 8. It's a shame because UCF right now is actually in a pretty good position. If you beat Wichita State, you'd probably play South Florida in the semis and have a chance to beat them. Now I know the regular season series didn't quite go UCF's way, but one game situation, that could really help UCF out. Do you think that? What's UCF's play right here? Are they praying for rain, or are they hoping that they get all these games in?
No. They got to get games in. They're right up. They're at 51 RPI.
Do they have to get? They have to get all the games in. Just win out to get in.
Yeah, because unfortunately, you brought up a great point last week. Had they gotten Houston in South Florida from an RPI standpoint, that would have been better. Right. Because Houston's a 39 RPI. South Florida, I think, is like 30, 31. Those 2 games might have been good enough to get them in if they win those 2 games. Instead, they're playing Wichita State, who I think is actually a worse matchup for UCF than Houston, because Wichita State has more firepower offensively. They can hit the ball out of the park from top to bottom in the lineup compared to Houston. Wichita State's at 62 RPI. So that's not really going to help your RPI move up. That's not going to help you get in. So you're right. They would have been better off in a weird way playing Houston because of an RPI standpoint. Plus, I think they match up better. Aaliyah's had great success against Houston over her career. So they don't have the power game that Wichita does. And that's something I'll mention another weather factor. If they do play, is the wind blowing out in that stadium? Because I've been there. I've called 18 games from there. When that wind's blowing out, it basically becomes Coors Field. All right. So that's something to keep in mind as well. I'm looking at the weather right now. They're saying winds from the southeast 10 to 15, and then south to north at 15. So I don't know how that ballpark is situated. If it's facing, if it winds from the south to the north would be, I don't know. We'll have to. I don't know. I'm trying to remember now. Google map that, baby. You're very good at that stuff. But anyway, the bottom line is for them, they got to get these games in. They're not like South Florida, Tulsa, and Houston. If this gets washed out, they're fine. I think those three are in the tournament. If you're UCF and Wichita State, who I do think can legitimately win this tournament, you need to get these games in somehow, some way. So they'll be willing to stay till whatever. But they got, look, first things first. UCF's got to get past Wichita State. They lost 2 out of 3 to the Shockers at home. Tight series. Lost a 10-inning game in one of those 3 games. I'm going to give you a stat. It's really going to define the UCF whether they have success or not. You ready for this? UCF this year, when they have scored 0 to 2 runs, are 6-17 on the year. When they've scored more than that, when they've scored 3 runs, just 3 runs or more, they're 28-3.
That's the magic number, 3 runs right there, right?
Yep, that's it.
Yeah,
that's the thing. They're going to get good pitching. Will they get offense? That's been the story with this team, especially in the second half of the year when they had their struggles. They struggled at the plate. Can they score runs? They're going to have to score runs at that stadium. That is not a stadium that's built 1-0. Even if the wind is not a factor, let alone if the wind's blowing out 10, 15 miles an hour, that's not a 1-0 stadium in my opinion. They got to unless the wind's blowing in, then you have a shot. But you have to keep the ball down. They got to hit the ball well. We'll see if they build on the momentum from the sweep against Memphis in the weekend that gives them confidence to do that. But they have to score and they have to hit with runners on base, especially against a team like Wichita State, who could score some runs.
Well, guess what? Wind blowing from the southeast, that wind's going to be blowing out to dead center field. So that shows you how, based on how Cougar Softball Stadium is situated.
Yeah, that's right. And, that's good.
You hear that, Cassidy Brewer?
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, the bats have to score runs. They have to take advantage. Wichita State's pitching's not great, although McDonald's a second team all conference that was named on Wednesday, but they're not the strong pitching as compared to South Florida, who has the reigning pitcher of the year for the second year in a row in Georgina Cork. So they got to get these games in and they got to play well and play to their abilities. If they play to their abilities, they'll have a great chance to advance. But if they don't, if they struggle, if they score 2 runs or less, they will lose.
Yeah. Couple quick notes before we get out of here. Congrats to Aaliyah White, all-conference first team, and Cassidy Brewer, all-conference second team for UCF. All-rookie team, Demaria Cannon, Carissa Ornelas, and Brianna Vasquez, all making it from UCF. So congrats on this postseason work. I know we're rushing. It sounds like rushing, but we got to get out of here real quick. Murph, what you got coming up this week?
Well, my foot's asleep, and I will join my foot here soon. I'm gonna finish my article on women's tennis and just saying how we should pay more attention to what they're doing because what they're doing is pretty remarkable.
Well, and then we've been paying attention to, and by you I mean the listening audience.
It's the royal we, Jeffrey.
Yes.
And then tonight, me and Eric will be out on downtown Orlando for the Charge On Tour stop.
Come on, Jeffrey, you're welcome to come.
3 in 3 days. You've got Josh Heupel, Johnny Dawkins, and Danny White pumping up the crowd, trying to get your money. Let's go.
Get your money. Eric, what about you?
Well, you heard Murph. I'm hoping to join him at the Charge On tour there and take a break from my softball coverage. I'll be watching softball around the country with this Selection Sunday on Sunday, and actually we'll be live. I'm going to be live on Sunday for In the Circle SB right after the selection show at 10 p.m. Sunday night, breaking down the bracket. So that'll be my lock-in focus there. And I want to say quickly, thank you to Mark Daniels and Ian McDougall, as I called the UCF Bethune-Cookman game on Tuesday night. Ian helped me out with great notes. And then Mark obviously gave me the opportunity to fill in for him while he was hosting that Charge On tour in Fort Lauderdale. So just want to say thanks to those guys for inviting me and let me fill in there and call the baseball game.
And thanks to you guys for holding down the fort while I was most decidedly out of the country this weekend on vacation with the fam. I totally unplugged, and it was glorious, let me tell you. So now I got to plug back in and catch us back up on everything. But it was fun. I've got Disney cruises, man. Wow, unbelievable. I had such a great time. The family had such a great time out in the Caribbean, and now it's back to the grind once again. But thanks to you guys.
Thanks, Jeffrey. Boy, I love that big silence.
Yeah,
I love that big silence. It's always good.
Yes, I always appreciate that, especially it's like another shot of espresso, right? You're talking to me. And thanks to you guys for listening. I know this was a quicker edition than normal, but we wanted to get this up quickly for you on Thursday. We'll be watching softball later today on the American Digital Network. Of course, don't forget the tennis and everything that's been going on. Make sure you follow us at UCF_Banneret, Facebook.com/Black and Gold Banneret, and blackandgoldbanneret.com for all the latest on UCF sports from us and all the latest from our friends on SB Nation as we head toward the off-season. For Brian Murphy and Eric Lopez, I'm Jeff Sharon saying thanks for listening. This has been the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Enjoy the weekend. We'll catch you later.